Fantasyland, what is going on? It is your boy, Andrew Schellenberg, at AM Schellenberg on Twitter. We are back for another Tri-Flexin number 3, but a month after the draft actually finished. So we're going to shut down rounds 11 through 20. Theo and I already did 1 through 10 on the first 2 podcasts. Go ahead and catch up on those 2 if you want to hear how our draft started in a lot more detail. But before we get into the finish and rating other people's teams and all this other goodness, let's make sure that we introduce Theo. Theo, partner in crime, the brains and the beauty behind this Tri-Flexin 1250 startup. Theo, what's going on? How are you?
Nothing. I'm excited to talk about team. I think we have a really nice team, and it's interesting to look back now a month later as to the processes we had with the picks and how the NFL draft kind of changed our strategy mid-draft. And but I really like this team. I'm happy with the way it turned out.
Yeah, and I mean, no better time to review a dynasty startup, maybe 10, 20 years, in the making, right? We want to have a winner 10 the next 10 years. We're going to review it a month later, right? It's the perfect time to do it. Of course, everything is known. We know exactly how it's all going to turn out, right, Theo?
Absolutely.
All right, let me pull up our draft board and we'll kind of recap kind of where we've been. And again, we're doing a dynasty startup. It's the new RotoViz format on the FFPC. Great place to play. What's great about this format, Theo, you and I covered it, the first 2 episodes of the Tri-Flexin series. You have to start 3 wide receivers. It's in the tight end premium. It makes things just a little bit more shallow in terms of getting that right starting lineup and kind of how thin the wide receiver position gets. So I'm showing our draft board. We went through the first 10 picks. Where we wanted to get was we wanted to get a nice, solid foundation, right, Theo? We wanted to make sure we had a couple quarterbacks on the board. In a startup, you can only take 3 max. Showing our first few picks, we got Saquon on the board. We got Najee Harris as our running back 2. And then we started peppering the wide receiver crew, right? We've got A.J. Brown, Calvin Ridley, Amari Cooper. We love those 3. We can slot those right into our 3 starting wide receiver spots. And then we started grabbing our quarterbacks. We grabbed we grabbed Ryan Tannehill, Matt Ryan, and then Laviska Shenault. To round out the top 10, kind of where we've been, the first 2 podcasts, again, covered in more detail. Then we snagged Derek Carr and Tony Pollard. So, Theo, heading into round 11, we don't have a tight end on the board yet, but let's give a little bit about where we've been. How are you feeling 10 rounds in? Are we happy about it? Right before we finish this thing off with the last 10 rounds.
Yeah, so we felt very good about our build. Derek Carr was sort of the pick that we took somewhat begrudgingly, but we were very happy to get our quarterback 3. It kind of cleared out the quarterback, the necessity of taking a third quarterback, and it kind of opened us up to other possibilities the rest of the draft. Not taking a tight end in the first 10 rounds of an FFPC Dynasty League is difficult, but the Tri-Flex format kind of makes it a little less necessary. So we took a slight risk on not taking our tight end. But when we got to the end of the 10th round, we felt like, we could just hold tight and somebody would fall to us, and they did.
Yeah, and that was the Tony Pollard pick from episode 2 when I started going nuts in the moment of being really worried about taking Tony Pollard. And of course, looking back on that, Theo, maybe as I switch to the draft board view here on the podcast, right? We took Tony Pollard, and what that did was, I think it was, Mims, Tyler Boyd, Michael Pittman, Elijah Moore, and Jalen Reagor all went. And it was like, oh, damn, we missed out on those 4 wide receivers.
Yes.
Theo, looking back, I think that we're much happier having Tony Pollard on the team and then having, again, you said it, clearing the deck for us to be able to get Derek Carr and feel good about it, like a floor of a third quarterback. Now, maybe of those, looking back on it, it would be great to have Elijah Moore, but I don't think that we really missed much for all of my whining and complaining over the Tony Pollard pick.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to have a Boyd or Pittman or especially Elijah Moore, who I'm a huge fan of, or even Reagor. There's some news, he's going to be running the slot in Philly. So having one of those guys would be a nice luxury, but having Pollard as our running back 3, it gives us immense upside. It's a 17-game season. He's shown you what he can do when he got the full role and Zeke missed. I think if Zeke went down tomorrow, Tony Pollard goes in the second round of Football Guys draft. I think he would be a rocket ship, and he would be drafted not quite as high as Zeke, but maybe 5 to 10 spots lower than him. He'd be going probably ahead of the likes of like J.K. Dobbins and DeAndre Swift right now in a Football Guys draft if he had a full load. And we are both bullish on him having a bit of a role even with Zeke there. I think he's shown enough. It's year 3. It's time to get him involved and make that offense a little more diverse. So we're very happy about Tony Pollard. And hindsight is always 20/20 in these things. We can't necessarily beat ourselves up about missing out on a couple of guys that we also like when we end up with somebody we do like.
Yeah. And now, as I told you, I'm way more emotional in the moment. And so now I feel great about it. I'm happy to have Tony Pollard on board. So Theo, again, the first 2 versions of this, we went more pick by pick. Let's go a couple of picks here, maybe talking about 11, 12, and then we can kind of finish it off with some more higher level discussion. But we said it first 10 rounds, we didn't take a tight end, mentioned it was a little bit more difficult to do. I think that we were feeling okay with how the board was opened up to us. We ended up taking Hunter Henry at the 11-10. We took Hunter Henry around like a pocket of 4 tight ends in 5 picks. Cole Kmet, Hunter Henry, Pat Freiermuth, and then Tyler Higbee. Theo, we went Hunter Henry. What's the thinking on Hunter Henry? And then anybody you would have preferred in that pocket over Henry? Maybe like a Tyler Higbee, maybe for like a 2021 season, perhaps?
So I think you could make an argument that Higbee 2021 might be ahead of Henry. I certainly would rather have Logan Thomas if he would have fallen a couple spots.
Oh, absolutely.
I think Thomas to me is a if we're ranking tight ends for Football Guys purposes, Logan Thomas is probably right around like tight end 9, whereas Henry would be in probably like that 12 to 14 range. So for me, it's Thomas. He had 72 catches last year. He's in a good offense. But Henry had the Patriots made a big commitment to Henry. He got a $15 million signing bonus to come there. He's still a young player. So I think that there's the fact that John Smith is there kind of makes Henry and Smith somewhat values. You're taking a bit of a risk that the other one's going to, kind of be the main guy. But I think that they'll be in 2 tight end formation, pretty much for the whole year. They're going to figure out interesting ways to get them the ball. Hunter Henry's had some injury concerns over his first few years, but when he's played, he's looked the part. And we both liked him, and I think he offers us enough that we can put him in 2021, knowing that we'll get probably tight end 1 production. And hopefully he's a guy that has a nice, 2-3 year stretch and plays out his contract well for the Patriots. So I'm happy with it. Pat Freiermuth, I think a year from now, we might say, Freiermuth is the real deal. He might shoot up like a rocket ship, but for year one, he's going to be in a timeshare with Eric Ebron, and there's 3 wide receivers of note in Pittsburgh. Plus Najee's going to hopefully catch 65 passes for us. So Freiermuth to me is one that I would like to have, but I don't think you can take Freiermuth as your tight end 1 in this unless you're kind of punting year 1 in a productive struggle. So
yeah, and of course we're not, right? I think that we're going for it. I think we feel good about the long-term prospects, but I also think that we have a competitive team here in year 1. And when you say tight end 1, to me, after you get off those top 4, top 5 guys, especially if you think about, as you said, in that Football Guys ADP, I'm just, Theo, I'm hoping for like a tight end 15 season. I would accept that on a winner, right? Like you promised me he finishes as a tight end 15, and I'm hitting accept on that all day long. Yes, please.
Yeah. It's sort of like last year. There was so much parity at the tight end position between like tight end 5 and tight end 20, where you might get like 2 more points per game out of having like TJ Hawkinson versus having Hawkinson was like 11 points a game, and he was right up there. Tanyan was like 11 points a game. So like you said, it's if you don't have one of the elite tight ends, then you can survive with a guy like Henry.
And this is no excuses, right? But this time last year, Logan Thomas wasn't being drafted. We're going to have a fab run before the season starts, and when we're going to have access to this year's Logan Thomas if he presents himself over the course of the training camps and preseason. So I like Hunter Henry. He's the perfect floor. I'm glad we didn't reach. I love the spot in this draft to start grabbing your tight end. Pivoting because again we're not going to go through pick by pick, and of course I said that and we've gone 11, and then I want to talk about 12 because one interesting thing that happened, and obviously you're aware, but our draft was moving slow and it was leading right up into the NFL draft. And I couldn't quite tell, right? Or you and I couldn't tell, is this on purpose? Is it a collective draft just agreeing hey, okay, we're not going to be able to finish this before the NFL draft. Let's slow it down as much as possible so we all know as much information. But our 12th pick, if you look at where we picked them among some of these other draft picks, you would know that this pick was made before the NFL draft started because we took Tylan Wallace at the 12:03. So let's talk about Tylan Wallace in the sense of if he's our biggest regret in the draft, and I've moved off of Tony to Pollard being a regret, love that pick now. But if Tylan Wallace is our biggest regret in the draft, what's the thought process there? What were we thinking pre-draft? Because he did, we were listening pre-show. He went before Diami Brown. 0% chance that we're going to see that, happening now. And obviously Tylan will drop to, back and maybe even just not even be like a 20th round pick. What were we thinking when we drafted Tylan Wallace, obviously before the NFL draft?
Well, we both like Tylan Wallace, and I think that a lot of fantasy football like Tylan Wallace. I know the guys at RotoViz like him. I know that there was Zach Reason liked him. I know a lot of people stake their claim on Tylan Wallace. I think that Tylan Wallace scared NFL teams with his ACL injury, but I think maybe we should have considered that a little bit more. But we took a shot with Wallace. Obviously, I'd rather have anybody else taken in this round at the wide receiver position, but we went bullish on Wallace. We wanted to get another rookie wide receiver. Our thinking was Wallace would have a chance to be like a high second round rookie pick. In standard FFPC leagues, and he would have been good value right here. But if we could flip it with Gallup right now, it would be the move. But round 12 hit rates are not great anyway. So if you miss on a guy in round 4, you really feel it. But if you miss on a guy in round 12, you can kind of live with it. So we Tylan Wallace going in the 5th round was pretty horrible for us, but.
We're texting the whole draft. Is it going to be him? And of course, then he goes to the Ravens to top it all off. Theo.
He goes to the Ravens, so he goes to a team with Rashad Bateman and Hollywood Brown on a team where he'll be lucky to get 45 targets for a year, and we call that a kind of success for a 5th round pick right there. So I'm not ready to call Tylan Wallace dust, but hit rates on 5th round wide receivers are low, and you can't imagine there's going to be too many fantasy-friendly receivers in Baltimore. If they have 2 fantasy-friendly wide receivers, that's a smashing success for them with Mandrews. So, we'll take the L on Tylan Wallace. We'll take the L on that one.
Well, let's just hope he makes the opening day roster, and then we'll go from there and see how the value progresses.
Yeah, and like you said, if you could potentially be cutting Tylan Wallace, and but like I said, we're not sitting back passively. That the first waiver wire run for any league you do is always super productive. I mean, the last couple of years, you can think of like Darren Waller went on, the early waiver wire runs. Terry McLaurin went on early waiver wire runs. DJ Shark, this is 2 years ago.
James Robinson,
James Robinson last year. I mean, you can name your Logan Thomas, Robert Tonyan. A lot of these guys were waiver wire picks. So, we won't really overthink this one. Tylan Wallace, we'll move on from him.
Absolutely. So the draft does start. Let's skip a round. So we're going to please the people. We're not going to go through every pick. Skip a round. 14th round is when the NFL draft starts. I love the beginning of this round. It wasn't our pick, but I love the Jordan Love pick. I think this is when the Aaron Rodgers news was going crazy on the NFL draft day. But you and I are on the clock as the draft starts. We're sitting on it. We knew with the wide receivers left on this particular draft that probably what was left was not going to be a day one wide receiver. But we did react to the draft, Theo. There was a particular draft pick that made us go a certain way at 1403. Why don't you talk about that and kind of like what you and I were thinking almost immediately once the NFL draft pick was made?
So Justin Fields goes to the Chicago Bears, and we, immediately we already had Darnell Mooney in our consideration for the 14th round. We had grabbed Nyheim Hines a few picks before, which we were happy about as like a nice lore play running back to add to our depth. So we wanted to go back to wide receiver, and Mooney went from a consideration to a guy that we were kind of excited about taking right here. He had success in year one. He's a true deep threat. I think he offers a lot of what you get from a guy like Hollywood Brown or Henry Ruggs 2 rounds earlier. He's very fast. He's a second-year player, and now he looks to be in a great situation with Justin Fields. I think Mooney has a chance of being a wide receiver 3 this season. I think that's a realistic bet. I think he could certainly not crack the wide receiver 3 range, but I think that his skill set matches up with Fields, and we absolutely reacted with draft, and we got a young player that we think has some upside. So yeah, we were stoked to get Mooney right there in the 14th.
Fields, deep ball thrower. Mooney, a ton of air yards last year, just never connected. Deep ball artist. So let's see what happens. So
yep.
At worst, he's. I think that he makes our 20-person roster. And I think that we're pretty happy if we're using him as a injury week fill-in, or if he's our wide receiver 5, if we're starting 2 wide receivers in our flex. I think that we're pretty happy with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So again, we're now getting better information, Theo, as the draft progresses. I think that we're thinking, somewhat along the lines of, okay, let's target some day 2 wide receivers because a lot of the running backs, just quite frankly, were either already drafted or the ones that are going now that in the NFL draft are going way too late. So we've got a little bit of information on the board. I think that ultimately, Theo, you and I had 3 day 2 wide receivers on our mind: Anthony Schwartz, Dwayne Eskridge, and Josh Palmer. Now we went 2 of those 3. Once you kind of like walk through which ones that we went and kind of like why we're thinking that, maybe we just take that one by one and we kind of leave the odd man out and we can discuss him last.
So 15th round, I think we talked about the 3 of them. All 3 of them went on day 2, and it came down to Eskridge versus Schwartz, and we went with Schwartz based on his youth. Eskridge we kind of liked about as much, but he's 24. Schwartz is 20. And the situation that Schwartz is in, the guy runs like ridiculous speed. He's like a 4.29, some say 4.25. And Auburn used him in creative ways. He had some rushing attempts. So to me, I think he's got a chance to help the Browns from day 1. And if you look a year from now, his stock might rise a lot because Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham are both 28 years old. So Schwartz has a chance to be a role in Cleveland. I like Eskridge. If I'm drafting a redraft team and I'm taking a shot on a guy or a underdog fantasy team, I'm taking probably Eskridge over Schwartz. But I think that Schwartz is got a really chance to, I think he's got a chance to be a better NFL player for his career long term. And he's a guy that we were happy to get, especially in the 15th round.
Yeah, and I think, we talked about hit rates in the 12th round, 15th round. We're just wanting to take these day 2 shots. And I think that that's exactly where we're at from a mindset perspective.
Yes.
Okay, day 2 wide receivers, the running backs on the board, they're not going to do much for us. Let's take some of these shots that, potentially could they turn into alphas. And maybe that was our second pick is the true could be an alpha. Anthony Schwartz, Kevin Stefanski, you mentioned it. I think that he can be seen to get his players in creative positions. I think he did a great job with the Browns last year. Hopefully for our purposes that continues. And again, a little bit higher expectations in Thailand. I'm really, obviously he should make the opening day roster if he's a day 2 wide receiver. But interested to see where that goes. I can already tell you, Theo, he's going to be the player that we're talking about that first waiver wire one. And I'm like, hey, Theo, let's ditch him. And the second I say let's ditch him, he's going to be an absolute monster starting in week 5. So just I'm putting the claim on him right now that I'm going to screw up the management of him as we go through this roster. So just be aware as I'm thinking of players I'm gonna mess up on.
Yeah, absolutely. There's got to be a little bit of patience with a 20-year-old wide receiver in a Browns offense.
Yep. All right. So we didn't go Dwayne Eskridge. We ended up getting Josh Palmer in the 18th round. I gotta say, of our back half picks, he is the sexiest pick I think that we took. I absolutely love it. The fact that the Chargers organization kind of sees something in him, is thinking about their young quarterback in Herbert and saying, okay, I think that he could be an alpha, especially with Mike Williams potentially leaving after this season. I absolutely love this pick, and I think, Theo, I'm going to have a lot more patience with Josh Palmer than I will Anthony Schwartz.
Yeah, so it's funny. Palmer was, did well at the Senior Bowl. He's big. He's strong. He had success against elite cornerbacks this year, but his overall stats are kind of shitty. But the Chargers liked him enough. Yeah, he was one of these guys where you can't really go by their stats. He had poor quarterback play at Tennessee, but his senior year he put on film, and the guy also he went. I know we're both in a lot of non Tri-Flex Dynasty leagues for FFPC, and Palmer was a very funny guy because in rookie drafts, I saw Palmer go in the second round once or twice. I also saw him fall to the fourth round, but people who liked Palmer are really being aggressive with Palmer. So for us to get him in the 18th round, and again, he went in the second round in one of my 750s with a pretty sharp owner took him in the second round, late second. So the idea with Palmer is a year from now, he might be the number 2 target. I take that back. He'd be the number 3 target because you have to give respect to Eckler. But he'd be the number 3 target to a quarterback we all love. And Mike Williams certainly does not look long for the situation in LA. So Palmer has a shot. He's a third rounder. So third round hit rates are not fantastic, but they're okay. Guys like Terry McLaurin have hit over the years in that third round. So I'm really happy to get Palmer in the 18th, and I think a lot of teams in our league would love to get a chance at Palmer if they could redo that 17th, 18th round.
Totally agree. I mean, I think that was the beauty of it is, I switched to our team view. We're going to go back to the draft board really quickly. I think if you look at, some of the people that were going, a lot of the other wide receivers that were drafted late, after Josh Palmer, were kind of going around him. And I really think that, as maybe the rookie drafts progressed or as people saw ADP develop or, saw, the sharper players really hone in on people, I really think that we got an absolute steal with Palmer there in the 18th round. I don't think that would happen to us again. So I was really happy that we had access to him there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Theo, here showing kind of how our team ended, we can kind of walk through. I know we grabbed a couple of good handcuffs. That way we feel good over the summer. I love that we only grabbed one tight end. The only question I have for you is Kylen Granson, Theo. We didn't get Kylen Granson on this team. Are we upset? Are we happy? Or is that going to tip your hand too soon for all the rookie drafts that you and I had together?
I mean,
that's the hard-hitting question.
Kylen Granson. We're both into Kylen Granson now, but certainly Gerald Everett as our tight end too I think it's money. I think that Russell Wilson makes tight ends, and the fact that Seattle went and got Everett from a division rival, they're familiar with him, and I think that Everett could be a very sneaky player this year. I tried to roster him in a few leagues. I know that I was able to pick him up in some rookie drafts where he wasn't rostered, and I was able to trade. I traded a third rounder for him in a league. So I have some Everett. I'm happy to have him. I think that, it's not out of the question that he outscores Henry. I think, Everett as our tight end too, I think we're fine. I think, adding a guy like Granson, I mean, there's a lot of these tight ends. A couple of them will become hot names as the summer goes along, and, we'll have opportunity to add those guys in the first waiver wire run. So I don't mind being a little thin at the tight end position. we certainly would feel bad if we were thin at the wide receiver position, which I don't
Absolutely.
think we are. Cuff wise, it was very important to get McFarland and Booker. We used them in the 19th and 20th. We got 19th and 20th round picks for them, so it was not like we had to reach. If anything happened to Saquon, Booker was a free agent signing. Wayne Gallman's out of the way. I think Booker would have a clear role in New York. McFarland versus Benny Snell is kind of always a little bit of an argument for the degenerate high-stakes fantasy football community. I've had some arguments with, a lot of friends about which one is the cuff to have. Certainly Snell won that argument last year, but, he didn't do anything, but he certainly got more work than McFarland. But I like McFarland very late, fourth-round draft pick. It's a former college coach of his is now the offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh in Matt Canada. And I would think that if Najee Harris went down, McFarland would see the receiving work and have, more productive per touch basis production. So and again, 19th and 20th round picks, we spent nothing on them. But we're definitely going to be able to hold those guys through training camp and make sure that, our Teflon running back, Saquon Barkley and Najee Harris stay nice and healthy for us.
Yeah. We, looking at it now, and as you reminded us, the Twitter beefs in the streets. It was these two teams. It was the Steelers and the Giants. Like that was the whole crux of the argument, because it was the Wayne Gallman and Benny Snell and Anthony McFarland arguments from last year. So somehow we tripped ourselves into having a Twitter argument on our bench. So
yep,
that will be fun. Let's just keep the roster free and clear from any of that. Theo, let's transition into roasting a couple of teams here. You mentioned being thin at wide receiver. So now we have up on the YouTube stream. We can add some of this, as part of screenshots and tech and the tweets when we tweet out the show link. But let's start with our boy Diddy Wing 2. Must be his second team here. He and again, this view that I like, Theo, is that we can see what they did with their draft picks for next year. How mortgaged are they for the future? We've got Diddy Wing 2 here, who doesn't have his first through fourth draft picks next year. That's okay. Look, first, second, that's what I'm really concentrated on. I don't know about you, Theo. But as I look at his team, like this is the most win now team of, that I have seen in one of these tri-flexes yet. And I want to focus on his 4 wide receivers. And again, we said at the top, new RotoViz, FFPC collaboration, tri-flex. It's, super flex, but for start 3 wide receivers, 2 additional flexes. One of them can be a quarterback, but you have to start 3 wide receivers, Theo. This guy drafted, my boy Diddy Wing, drafted 4, Keenan Allen, Henry Ruggs, Allen Robinson, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Let's just start there. Because look, the rest of the team, he's got some studs. But you're in a tri-flex draft, 3 wide receivers. What are we doing here, Theo?
Diddy Wing has an interesting team build. I'm pretty sure that the Sean Siegels and Dave Cabins of the world in RotoViz would not like the team build here with only 4 wide receivers. I think that they might throw up if they saw this team build. Listen, it's and I don't know who Diddy Wing is. So if he listens to this, by all means,
come on the show
this year. But
come on the pod to discuss.
Another thing I'll take issue with. Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers is a great combination of quarterbacks, but his quarterback 3 is Kyle Trask. I would like a quarterback 3 that if I'm going to take a young quarterback 3, I'd like a guy that is, more guaranteed to play. I like having a quarterback 3 that I can plug in if there's an injury. If an injury happens to Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers, he's going to end up having to cut Kyle Trask to add another quarterback to fill, so he has 2 quarterbacks starting. And then in terms of the running back position, listen, the guy got Travis Kelce's fantastic. He's going to have a fantastic year. Allen Robinson, Keenan Allen, beautiful. That's a beautiful build. And Henry and Elliott, but his team is so top heavy. He's going to need Zach Moss to be David Montgomery this year. And he's going to need Marquez Valdez-Scantling to be a wide receiver 3 and Henry Ruggs to be a wide receiver 3. And then he can, kind of prove everybody wrong. but basically sacrifice the future to win now. If I'm going win now, I'm not taking Kyle Trask. And just based on this format, I absolutely need wide receivers. And like we discussed, it's difficult to find wide receivers on the waiver wire. Even that first waiver wire run, there's not going to be a whole lot of guys who are just going to pop in training camp. You're going to say, "Ooh, I need to grab them." The fact that there's 3 wide receivers you're starting, most of the teams in our league kind of were like us, and they end up with 6+ wide receivers. I mean, in this format, you could roster 8 and kind of talk yourself into that. You cannot have too many wide receivers in the league, and you certainly can't be with 4.
So Theo, you don't even know, but that's a beautiful transition. All right, so that was me. We dumped on Diddy Wing. Diddy Wing, come on the pod to discuss.
Yes.
Let's transition to Giles of the Trees Dino, also number 2. He took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm still going. 9, 10, 11, 12 wide receivers in this format, Theo. Before we get to it, he has George Kittle as his only tight end and 3 first-round picks next year. I'm going to start off by saying I like this build. I like some of the I like the wide receivers he took. So I gave you numbers. He took DJ Moore, Cortland Sutton, Odell Beckham, Brandon Cooks. That's great. Diami Brown, Jalen Waddle, and Deontay Harris, and maybe you get something for Paris Campbell. He's got AB mixed in there. Robbie Anderson, I skipped over. He's got a great core. He can start 5 of those, and probably will start 5 of those wide receivers. And even if he's not starting those 5 receivers in this format, and I'm going to say it for the 69th time today, you're starting 3 of them. When our friend Diddy Wing is in a lot of trouble, Diddy Wing is going to have to further mortgage himself, or just sit on the sidelines. And I think Giles is going to be pretty liquid in value that he can then ship around the league here. What do you think, Theo?
I think Giles had a great strategy, and he followed it through in the entire draft. And if you're going to go naked at tight end and go with only 1, George Kittle is certainly one of the better tight ends in the league. He's going in the top 15, 16 picks of a lot of these football guys' drafts. So he's got a foundational tight end. Quarterback-wise, he's got guys, we loved Matthew Stafford. I think Stafford and Brady are quarterback 1s this year, or right around there. And Deshaun Watson, there's 2 ways to look at Watson. Either he stole Watson and Watson's only going to be suspended a few games, or not at all, and Watson will come in and have great production. Or you look at Deshaun Watson as a future first-round pick. And it's kind of like a guy he's stashing. And then running back-wise, he has Aaron Jones, which is great. And then he has David Montgomery, who we're not huge fans of, but he's going to be a running back too. And then I like how he was able to add Gaskin and Malcolm Brown. And so he's got the Miami running back locked up. And he's got Gus Edwards. So Giles is a team to be reckoned with in this league.
Yes.
I also like how his wide receivers, he has Antonio Brown, Brandon Cooks, and Odell Beckham, and Robbie Anderson. So he's got some productive veterans, and he's able to mix them in with Jalen Waddle, Deontay Johnson, Diami Brown. So he's also got
Nico Collins too,
and Cortland Sutton, and DJ Moore. The guy's loaded. So Giles has a hell of a team. That's going to be a tough team for us to beat. I still think we can absolutely beat him, but he's got a really, really well built team. Yep.
All right, so let's just take a quick look at another team who mortgaged their future, and then we'll kind of get to some of the friends of the pod, if you will. This is Maltese Pack. The key thing that he did, and we talked about it a little bit, is his start. I think I loved. He traded up. He got the 102. I like being aggressive, although, and Theo, this is where I want your thoughts. This format, where I think that you're going to, it's going to be shallower in terms of the free agent pool. Or who's available to start, because there is also no kicker in defense. He had Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and then he got the Dalvin Cook start. Now, he is a little bit older across the rest of his roster. He is mortgaged for the future. I loved his start, Theo, but then I think that he fizzled out in terms of where I would have taken it, in terms of purposely trying to add some level of youth on the back end of the roster. And I just don't think that he did. I just think he went old throughout. And I don't think he mixed in much youth upside to help protect him for his mortgaged future. So where are you thinking with this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think his window is very. So I will say that having Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes kind of covers up a lot of issues in a super flex format. So while he's rebuilding his team, he has two quarterbacks he won't ever have to touch. So he took, just as a refresher, he took Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen with the first two picks in the draft. So I think he had the first pick and he traded up to get pick 2. So he took those two quarterbacks. Then he aggressively got Dalvin Cook. So Michael Thomas was a great pick for him. Was very fortunate in the draft that Mike Davis looks like a guy who's rising. On the flip side, Melvin Gordon, you feel a lot worse about with Javonte Williams there. So I like this kind of win now a little bit more because he has the strength at the quarterback position. But again, his window is small, but he certainly could put it together. I don't love the team, but I certainly like the aggressive nature of getting, the two guys you really want at 1-2, and then we both love Dalvin Cook, so I could see this team making some noise. Not a fan of tight ends. I think Tanyan's going to regress, and Herndon at this point. Is he rosterable? Is he there's people saying in New York he's going to have a role again. We heard this all last summer, so I like our thin tight end build better than his. And then wide receiver wise, there's a number of question marks, but he does have Michael Thomas, and Julio Jones won't disappear. So not a huge fan, but I can kind of see some of his thought process.
You can squint and get there for this year. It's just I feel like, Theo, when I do teams like win now teams, extreme win now teams, and again, I love the 102, 101, 102 Dalvin Cook starting. Awesome. I just feel like the rest of the draft is almost all going to go over the cliff at the same time. They're going to be O'Doyle rulesing off the cliff. Melvin Gordon, Leonard Fournette, Tariq Cohen, David Johnson, Mostert. I think that the whole team, and I think that when I do this, where I found myself is wanting to at least take some youth darts, even if maybe they're more unknown than some of these veterans. He's not going to be able to play all the veterans here. So I think in my preference, if you're going to do this like really top heavy, older veteran start, then I want at least some youth mixed in. And there's almost no youth throughout this team, except for at the quarterback position, which you mentioned.
You want your win window to be, forever. And you can kind of balance it with, you can kind of balance it where you're never having to truly blow it up and rebuild. I mean, listen, we all say this, and I've had some rebuilds, you've had some rebuilds, but when you have a startup, I think, like you said, you want to have that mix of, you can go productive struggle and kind of mail it in your first year, and you might end up liking years 2, 3 and on. But I think that in the FFPC format, where you're only rostering 20 guys, I think you can put together a team that kind of just continues to win. And I think going to the extremes is somewhat unnecessary. Yep.
Makes sense. All right, Theo, let's do a couple friends of the pod, and then we'll transition with one last team before we talk about a trade offer we received. So this is Biplap Mandela's Bitcoin team. He went Justin Herbert earlier, and I think as he does, trades around a little bit. He did for his, call it QB2, he did grab the combination of the New Orleans Saints quarterbacks, which I like the idea of. You can kind of see how that progresses over the summer. And again, in these startups in the FFPC, you can only draft 3 in either the Superflex or the Tri-Flex modes. His running backs, I really like what he did. And, he did grab James Robinson. He was on James Robinson last year. He grabbed the Browns backfield. He got Hunt and Chubb. Theo, Sermon's a guy that I just continue to miss out on, but he drafted Sermon. And I just think Sermon, especially with the Jeff Wilson news, I think Sermon's going to be a guy who's just going to get more and more equity, as the summer progresses. At least that's my opinion. Where do you see Bips team going? Do you like his team? What would you think of his prospects?
So I think Bips got a chance in year 1, and I love how he built his team. I love the strategy of having Winston and Hill as your quarterback 2 and kind of figure it out later. Justin Herbert as his foundational quarterback 1, hopefully forever for him. And then it's like the football gods shined on him. He got James Robinson and, Travis Etienne kind of screwed that up. But then the Trey Sermon pick, ended up looking great. So it kind of balanced all out. And then it's interesting to go Chubb and Hunt on the same team. I've seen some sharp players do this, though. It usually seems kind of counterproductive to have two guys with so much high draft capital in a startup, but they both have their own role. They both could potentially be, I think they should both be top 24 backs again, with Chubb being a running back 1 and Hunt a running back 2. So Bip, like we talked about, building a team where you can win now and also have an eye on the future. Bip certainly did that with Diggs and Hopkins as his top 2 wide receivers and Mike Evans as his wide receiver 3. He has wide receivers every bit as good as ours. I would still take AJ Brown ahead of Hopkins and Diggs, but you can make an argument against it. And
of course, Theo, I just noticed too. He stacked quarterbacks, he stacked running backs, and then he also stacked tight ends. The Steelers. He brought in your boy Freiermuth.
So I'm in some leagues with Bip, and he has about as much Pat Freiermuth as I do, and I have Freiermuth on like 7 teams now in FFPC. I love Freiermuth. So does Bip. He's been taking him all year, so I love how he did that. I think there's a chance that hopefully if it all works out for Pat Freiermuth people, you're cutting Eric Ebron in week 10 and just and Freiermuth takes his job. But I think that, you kind of protect yourself. And he also has TJ Hawkinson, which is a guy that we both have as like a top, 4 or 5 dynasty tight end with upside. So yeah, Bip really does it well. And he's got our 2nd round pick, and he's also got his own 2nd round pick. And he was able to pick up a 2022 first. So he has 2 firsts and 2 seconds. So if he's making a run towards, the title, he can potentially move picks and add a stud. So I like his build a lot.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about one more team, and this is redshirted seniors. He is doing the productive struggle. As I'm showing his team, he is the one who drafted, Jordan Love as the Jordan Love news was going on. Kellen Mond and Trevor Lawrence. I think he took Trevor Lawrence 105, 106, and then basically just sat on quarterback the rest of the draft. One thing to notice about him is Theo, 4 first-round picks next year. Is that 5 second-round picks? And then his team, right? He's got Trevor Lawrence, Alvin Kamara, and then Devontae Adams as the backbone of his team. If you're going to do the productive struggle, I don't even know if this is going to be as bad of a struggle as you'd even like. I think that's doing a disservice to the word struggle. I think his team is actually pretty competitive for year one. I think the only issue, right, is if Aaron Rodgers is still in Green Bay. I think that he's going to have an issue in that second quarterback spot. But again, somebody who's got a lot of young draft picks, he's got a young roster. He's got an arsenal of 9 picks in the first 2 rounds of the rookie draft next year. I think this is a team that can make some moves and be competitive in year one.
Yeah, I mean, he had some really, really interesting picks. And he also has, Alvin Kamara, like you said, Gallup, Kupp, Adams. And then he's able to add Elijah Moore, who, I'm extremely high on.
Theo, he's the one who he's the one who he got us. He pranked us after the Pollard pick. He's the one who went to the Pittman and Elijah Moore back to back. Dagger in the heart. Yeah. Yep.
He certainly spotted the value and he took it there. And he's got a hell of a build. He's got a lot of picks for 2022, and he has a year from now. Trevor Lawrence could be a top 5 pick. I'm not quite sure that Trevor Lawrence is going to have as dominant a rookie season as some do, but you can't deny the talent and the situation where he's going to have opportunities to shine. And he's got, veterans who he got Gallup at great value, I think. Gabe Davis, he got at great value. Tight end wise, he's got, Logan Thomas, who we both like a lot. He got Ferkser at great value. Redshirts could have a year. And again, he's got all those picks. So if he looks like he's competing for the championship, he can offer a first and a second and pick up a stud veteran to fill a spot, even a quarterback you trade for. And again, I think that I'm in minority that I think that the Rodgers situation will work itself out. And I think he'll be the Green Bay quarterback this year. So Redshirts will be in a little bit of a bind for his quarterback too. But with all those picks, I think he'll figure it out.
And to connect back to our first review and be a little bit mean again, he's got Diddy Wing's first and second round pick. So,
yeah, certainly.
So things go wrong for Diddy.
For things to fall apart for Diddy Wing, and it would just be if that pick turns out to be a high one for Diddy Wing too. I mean, Red Shirts is looking good.
That's right. All right, so let's transition away from Red Shirts, or at least to a trade he offered us. We can pull that trade up now, and this will be our kind of last segment for the night. So Red Shirt did send us a trade offer. It's his Devontae Adams for our Calvin Ridley, Tony Pollard, and 2022 first-round pick. I'll just start with one nonsense comment, and then Theo, again, you're the brains and the beauty. Hey, man, after I spent the last month convincing myself that Tony Pollard was the right pick and that I didn't want his Pittman or his Elijah Moore that he got, I'm certainly not just flipping Tony Pollard back. I don't even know if I would do, and again, not a serious comment, I don't even know if I would do, after all that convincing of myself, Devontae Adams straight up for Tony Pollard. But Theo, where are you thinking for this deal? Because I think that you're much more measured and serious.
I love Devontae Adams. I had a 500 where I traded 1.05 overall and 1.07 overall in a rookie draft to get Devontae Adams and a 2022 third, which I thought was good value at the time, and I still would make the trade despite the Rodgers rumors. I think Devontae, with Jordan Love or with any quarterback Green Bay throws out there, Devontae Adams is a wide receiver one anytime he steps on the field, and he'll get peppered with targets. But this is too much to give up for him. Calvin Ridley, we feel great about. Ridley situation, whether Julio's there or not, Ridley's going to have a great year. I think that having 160 targets for Ridley this year is not out of the question. He was in the 140s last year. I think he's going to put up like Stephon Diggs-like targets this year. And Pollard, we're both high on. And then to add the first-round pick, I mean, it's not happening. I'm not sure I would do it with Pollard and Amari Cooper in the first round pick, let alone Ridley. So it's a no for us. I don't know.
But let's hit reject live here, Theo. First of all, let's hit reject. All right, now that that's done, right? Wait, hold on. First of all, should I even hit reject? Yeah, of course. Yeah. Theo. The good news for our league mates, if they are listening, is we did already pay our 2022 deposit. So our first round pick for the right value is available. I just don't think this is the right value for us.
No, I mean, listen, and if it comes down the line and we have a chance to win and it's a matter of getting, Devontae Adams for 2022 first and Laviska Shenault, that's something that I would do. But again, Ridley's a foundational player for us.
Absolutely.
I still prefer Adams in the bubble, but I think a year from now it might be a little closer. So it's
to get rid of Ridley and upgrade to Adams. And I think that we're all saying it is an upgrade, especially for this year. I think that that's what we're thinking, but it doesn't move the needle for our prospects. Our prospects are probably in the same tier as they were pre-trade.
Yeah,
and I think
you'd be adding potentially 2 points per game, which I don't think is anything that really changes your team. If you could go from Laviska Shenault to Adams, you might be adding 10 points per game. So you have to kind of balance, what it would do for your team. I mean, I'd love to get Adams. Red Shirts, if you were listening, keep sending offers. Potentially we can work one out. But
he is a man. He is a man who likes to be overpaid. So we'll have to work through that.
Yep.
we like to pay fair prices around here. Right,
and we are, as an announcement to our loyal listeners, we are planning on another high stakes FFPC Tri-Flex startup, and just so you understand, we are not doing these for your enjoyment. We are doing these so we can make money.
Yes.
So we're going for it in each of these leagues, and hopefully we cash a couple of these, and it'll be a great process that we've documented, but. sometime about a week after the Memorial Day holiday, we'll be in another startup. So we're fired up about that one.
I love it, Theo. Let's close out there. Really appreciate it. Glad we were able to get Tri-Flexin number 3 off the ground and finish off our first high stakes draft. As you mentioned, we got the second one coming up here shortly. Looking forward to talking on this Tri-Flexin and all the other podcasts on the Goat District Podcast Network. Thanks, Theo, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Take care, everyone.